He planned everything perfectly. The scenic route, the remote trail, the cliff with a 128-foot drop to the rocks below. He had visited that park 9 separate times before that day, mapping routes, marking locations, and preparing. He even drew a pink X on a map to mark the exact spot. Then he brought his wife there on their wedding anniversary, told her it was a romantic surprise, and pushed her off the edge. What investigators found afterward would reveal something even more chilling. This was not the first time Harold Henthorn had done this. It was just the first time he got caught. Before we get into what happened that day in the mountains, let me tell you about Toni. Because this story is not really about Harold Henthorn. It is about the woman he spent years pretending to love while quietly planning to kill her. Toni Bertolet was a successful ophthalmologist, a doctor who spent her career preserving and restoring people's sight. She had her own medical practice, her own income, her own independence. She was accomplished in the way that comes from years of genuine discipline and talent. When she met Harold Henthorn, she believed she had found a partner who matched her. He presented himself as a successful businessman, a fundraiser, confident, charming, attentive. The kind of man who seemed to have his life completely together. They married in September 2000, owned a home in Highlands Ranch and a vacation cabin near Grand Lake. From the outside, they looked exactly what they were supposed to be, a successful, stable, happy couple. But Harold Henthorn had a secret that would have ended everything if Toni had ever discovered it. Harold had not worked in 20 years. Not one day of real employment. No business. No fundraising career. No income of his own. Every bill paid. Every vacation taken. Every comfortable morning in that house. All of it funded entirely by Toni's medical practice. He had constructed a complete fictional version of himself and maintained it convincingly for 2 decades. While his wife worked long hours, saving people's eyesight, Harold stayed home and lived off her earnings, telling anyone who asked that he was busy with business ventures. And while he did that, he was doing something else, taking out life insurance policies on his wife. Policies she did not know existed. Policies worth a combined total of $4.7 million, with Harold listed as the sole beneficiary. Now, life insurance itself is not unusual or suspicious. Many married couples take out policies on each other to protect the family financially in the event of a tragedy. But here is what separates responsible planning from something far darker. Toni had no idea these policies existed. She had not consented to them. When a spouse secretly takes out millions of dollars in life insurance on their partner without that partner's knowledge, it raises an obvious question. Who benefits if something happens? And who has reason to make sure something does? Before the cliff, there was the beam. May 2011. Harold and Toni were at their vacation cabin near Grand Lake. Harold was supposedly doing repairs on the deck. Toni was inside. Suddenly, a massive wooden beam came crashing down from the deck. It struck Toni directly in the back of the neck and upper back. The impact was severe enough to require medical attention. Harold's explanation was simple. The beam just fell. A terrible accident. Pure chance. Toni survived. She recovered. Life continued. But investigators who later looked at this incident noticed something disturbing about where that beam had landed and how it had struck her. The trajectory, the angle, the specific location on her body. If Toni had died that day, it would have looked like exactly what Harold said it was. A tragic accident on a family property. He would have collected the insurance and moved on. She didn't die, so Harold waited and planned more carefully. Picture this. September 29, 2012. Rocky Mountain National Park, Colorado. Harold tells Toni he has planned a special surprise for their 12th wedding anniversary. A romantic hike through one of the most breathtaking landscapes in America. Just the two of them. She is delighted. She has no reason not to be. What Toni does not know is that Harold has visited this park 9 times in the months leading up to this day. 9 separate trips, alone, studying the terrain, looking for the right location. Somewhere remote enough that rescue would take hours. Somewhere with enough natural danger that a fall could be explained as a tragic accident. He found what he was looking for. A cliff. 128 feet of sheer rock face dropping to boulders below. He marked it on a map with a pink X. Then he put that map in his car and drove home to his wife. That afternoon, Harold and Toni hiked off the established trail. Photos from Toni's camera show them eating lunch at a scenic overlook around 3:30 in the afternoon. They look happy, relaxed, celebrating 12 years together. The last photo Toni ever took is the one that would haunt investigators. Harold stands at the very edge of the cliff. His hand is firmly gripping a pine tree branch for balance and safety. He is turned toward Toni, smiling, as she takes his photograph from several feet back. He knew exactly where to stand so that he would not fall. 30 minutes later, Toni would be dead at the bottom of that same drop. Harold later told investigators that Toni fell at approximately 5:15 in the afternoon. He did not call 911 until 6 o'clock, 45 minutes. His explanation was that it took him 15 minutes to reach her body at the base of the cliff, then another 30 minutes to assess her condition, move her, find cell coverage, and make the call. But here is what the 911 dispatcher noticed immediately. When she guided Harold through performing CPR on his wife, he did not sound like a man performing CPR. He sounded like a man describing a scene, narrating, talking calmly, not the breathless, physical struggle of someone doing chest compressions on an unconscious person. And Harold had told the dispatcher he needed to hang up to conserve his phone battery. After hanging up, he made nearly 24 phone calls and exchanged close to 100 text messages. By the time the first park ranger reached Toni Henthorn, it was after 8 o'clock in the evening, more than 3 hours after she fell. Toni Henthorn was dead. Initially, investigators treated it as a tragic accident. A woman had fallen during an anniversary hike. Terrible, heartbreaking. These things happen in national parks. But then they searched Harold's car. They found the map, with the pink X marking the exact location where Toni had fallen. When a ranger asked Harold about it, he struggled to explain it, stumbled over his words, could not give a clear answer for why that specific remote cliff location was marked before they ever arrived. Then investigators looked at the finances. $4.7 million in life insurance, secret policies, Harold as the only beneficiary, no job, no income, 20 years of living off Toni's earnings. And then they found something that changed the entire scope of the investigation. Harold Henthorn had been married before. Her name was Sandra Lynn Henthorn. May 1995. Harold and Sandra were driving on a rural highway in Douglas County, Colorado. According to Harold, they had a flat tire. He pulled over to change it. Sandra crawled under the Jeep Cherokee to retrieve a lug nut that had rolled underneath. The car fell off the jack. It landed on top of her. She died from injuries consistent with traumatic asphyxiation. At the time, it was ruled an accidental death. Harold was the only witness. He collected a large insurance payout. No charges were ever filed. Now, look at the pattern side by side. First wife. Died in 1995. Around the 12th year of the marriage. Freak accident. Harold is the only witness. Large insurance payout. Second wife. Died in 2012. On their 12th wedding anniversary. Freak accident. Harold is the only witness. $4.7 million insurance payout. In criminal investigations, when you see a pattern this specific repeated across two separate incidents involving the same person, it has a legal name. It is called a signature, and it matters enormously in court. Under the federal rules of evidence, prosecutors can introduce evidence of prior bad acts not to say the person is generally a bad person, but to demonstrate a specific pattern of behavior, planning, and intent. The fact that Harold's first wife died in nearly identical circumstances, with Harold as the only witness and a massive insurance payout waiting, was not something a jury could simply ignore as coincidence. On November 6, 2014, more than 2 years after Toni's death, Harold Henthorn was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The trial began in September 2015. For 10 days, federal prosecutors presented over 300 pieces of evidence. The map with the pink X, the $4.7 million in secret insurance policies, the 9 scouting trips to the park, the 45-minute delay before calling 911, the suspicious 911 call itself, the calls and texts made immediately after he claimed his battery was dying, the Beam incident in 2011, the death of his first wife in 1995. The defense argued that everything was circumstantial. Accidents happen. The map marking was innocent. The insurance policies were responsible planning. The scouting trips were Harold trying to find the perfect romantic location. The first wife's death was a tragic coincidence. This is worth understanding. Circumstantial evidence does not mean weak evidence. It means evidence that requires the jury to draw a reasonable inference, rather than having direct proof like an eyewitness or a confession. Many of the most airtight murder convictions in American history have been built entirely on circumstantial evidence. Because sometimes, when you stack enough circumstances together, they stop looking like coincidences and start looking like the truth. The jury deliberated for 10.5 hours. On September 21st, 2015, they returned their verdict. Guilty of first-degree murder. At sentencing, Toni's family spoke. Her father, her brother, Sandra Lynn's family spoke too. 20 years of suspicion finally validated in a courtroom. 20 years of being told it was just an accident. 20 years of knowing, without being able to prove it, that the man who walked away from their sister's death was not telling the truth. The judge sentenced Harold Henthorn to life in federal prison with no possibility of parole. Harold Henthorn is currently 68 years old. He is held in a federal prison in Indiana. He maintains his innocence. Every single day, he maintains his innocence. He has filed appeal after appeal, arguing that evidence about his first wife's death should not have been admitted, that his defense attorney failed him, that he deserves a new trial. Every appeal has been denied. In his court filings, Harold blames everyone: his lawyer, the prosecutor, the judge, the evidence, the jury. Everyone is lying. Everyone is against him. Everyone except Harold. Here is what this case actually teaches us, beyond the horror of what Harold did. It teaches us how predatory marriages work when one partner is concealing their true intentions. Harold Henthorn never worked. He never contributed financially. He constructed an entire false identity and used it to access Toni's resources, her income, her trust, and ultimately her life. This is called financial abuse when the victim is alive. When the victim is dead, it becomes the motive. It teaches us that secret life insurance is one of the clearest financial red flags in domestic homicide cases. The moment investigators discovered those policies, the entire nature of the investigation changed. If you are in a marriage and you discover that your spouse has taken out significant life insurance on you without your knowledge or consent, that is not a paperwork oversight. That is something you need to take seriously. And it teaches us that patterns matter. Harold Henthorn killed his first wife and was never charged because no one connected the dots in time. Pattern recognition in suspicious deaths is not about assuming the worst. It is about asking the right questions before it is too late. Toni Henthorn was 50 years old when she died. She had spent her career giving people back their sight. She had patients who depended on her. She had decades of life ahead of her. She trusted her husband enough to follow him off a marked trail into a remote part of a national park on their wedding anniversary, with no one else around. That trust cost her everything. And Sandra Lynn trusted him too. Long before Toni ever met him, she trusted him enough to get into a car with him on a quiet highway. And she never made a home. 2 women, 2 marriages, 2 suspicious deaths, 2 insurance payouts. 1 man who walked away from both. Until he didn't. Harold Henthorn will die in that federal prison in Indiana, still blaming everyone, still claiming innocence, still insisting that 2 wives died in freak accidents by extraordinary coincidence. But the jury did not believe him. Sandra Lynn's family did not believe him. And neither should you. Because here is the truth that this case leaves behind. Harold Henthorn looked at his wife, a woman who worked hard, built a career, trusted him with her life, and decided she was worth more dead than alive, for $0.7 million. That is what he decided Toni's life was worth. Not her love, not her loyalty, not the years she spent funding a life he had never earned. For $0.7 million. And somewhere in a federal prison cell tonight. That is the number Harold Henthorn has to live with for the rest of his life. While Toni Henthorn rests, finally beyond his reach.